All right. Thank you all for joining. Sorry for the internet fun there at the beginning. We're going to be talking about basic spend tracking and reporting today for crises. And this basically means how can we track spending, and then how can we report on that spending in Workday during times of crisis if we're not using Workday projects. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. All right, so just a little bit about me. I live near Dallas, Texas. I'm a senior financials consultant and team lead at InchCrowd. My specialization is Workday Spend. I've been in the ecosystem for over 5 years. Prior to this, I worked for a lot of years implementing, upgrading, and supporting another ERP system. And I won't read off the certifications to you, so you can see those there. And a little bit about InchCrowd. So who is InchCrowd? Who are we? We deliver HCM, financials, extend, integration, and AMS services. We have over 160 employees across the globe. Our consultants hold over 670 Workday certifications. We have 15 product leads. We have completed over 350 projects for 260 customers. We have over 70 AMS clients, which I think this number is actually higher today. I think I heard over 80. We have completed 70 plus Phase X deployment projects. We are the leader in integrations in the Workday ecosystem, and we partner with our customers to drive maximum value from Workday. All right, so our current crisis is COVID-19, but many of us have lived through other crises, and we know that this one won't be our last. So what can we do about that? How can we track in Workday and report on that? Here's our agenda. We're going to talk about some basic configuration, benefits and usages of these configurations, what transactions can we use to manage this, and then what kind of reporting can we see? After we talk through these basics, we're going to hop into a GMS tenant and look at some of this configuration and reporting in a tenant. And then at the end, we'll have questions. So basic configuration, of course, we're talking about a financial system here. So new GL accounts, that would be a good way for us to track spending related to a specific crisis or event. Spend categories would facilitate reporting to those GL accounts. Of course, we have to update our account posting rule set. And then supplier groups and categories might give us some additional options there. Some additional configuration we might consider would be types for transactions. So we can set up types for requisitions, purchase orders, and supplier invoices. We can also set up basic projects. So even if you don't own the project SKU or you don't have projects implemented, you can set up what's called a basic project, and it functions just as another work tag. We can create custom work tags. And if we have some additional needs above a work tag, we can create custom organizations. So here are some reasons why you might lean towards a custom organization over a custom work tag. So here are some benefits and usages of these configuration items. For GL accounts, we can include those in reporting. For spend categories, we can use those in reporting also, and then for business process routing. For supplier categories and groups, we could do some specific supplier tracking or management based on those. We can report on those and also use them for business process routing. For those types we talked about, requisition and purchase order types, we can use those in reporting and in business process routing. And then for supplier invoice types, also business process routing. For basic projects, which function just like a work tag, we can use those for reporting. Same thing for custom work tags, and then with custom organizations, we can also include those in business process routing. So reporting everywhere, business process routing in some cases. So all of this configuration that we've been talking about is available in spend transactions. So requisitions, purchase orders, supplier invoices, business assets, journal entries, and expense reports. So here are some delivered reports. I focus on delivered reports because we are really talking about basic configuration tracking and reporting. Of course, you can also write custom reports to include any specific information that you need, but these prompts are available on delivered reports to help us narrow down our crisis reporting. And then we have another group of delivered reports here, crossing our spend functional areas here from procurement all the way through to expenses. And let's hop into a tenant here. And I did have these queued up. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Yes. All right. So for account sets, for GL accounts, I'm just looking at our account set here. I set up, for example, for sample transactions here, 2 accounts. So an asset account, so that we could track any assets purchased during this time, and also an expense account so that we could track our specific spending, our expenses for that. Also spend categories. So for my demo here today, I did create a new spend category hierarchy called crisis tracking. And right now I have 1 spend category included in this hierarchy. Things to note about the spend category are usages. Right now, our crisis tracking spend category is enabled for all types of transactions. We can use this on ad hoc payments, on expense reports, on procurement transactions like requisitions and purchase orders, and then supplier invoices. And the other configuration that's important is to check the track items box if we want to track assets for our crisis spending. Next step on our list was our account posting rule set, basically the spend rule. This is the one that we're interested in. So my 2 accounts that I set up, I have my asset account here. So if I'm using the spend category hierarchy, which right now includes my spend category of crisis tracking, and I'm doing any kind of asset processing with it. So if I'm going to depreciate this asset, or if I just want to track it, it's non-depreciable, I want to use my crisis assets account. And then for expense spending, I have my same spend category hierarchy here, crisis tracking, but if my accounting treatment is expense, then I'm going to be hitting my expense account. So this is important to getting our accounting correct so that our reporting will be correct. Another option we talked about, supplier categories or groups. I set up groups here in this tenant that you could set up supplier categories if you want. If you recall, suppliers must belong to one and only one supplier category, but they can be associated with multiple supplier groups. So in our case, I went with supplier groups because I wanted to perhaps use suppliers that already existed. Maybe I'm already using a supplier to purchase cleaning products, but I also need to include masks and gloves in those purchases now for our crisis spending. So using a group allows the supplier to be a little bit more flexible. So requisition types, we talked about these transaction types. I set up a requisition type of crisis tracking, so we'll see in a bit how we can report on that. It's the same thing for purchase order types and supplier invoice types, so I won't show you that, but the screen looks very similar to this. And then basic projects. So basic projects function just like a work tag. I've set one up called crisis tracking, and we'll see how this is used in some transactions and reporting. So let's take a look at reporting. So here is our Find Requisitions report. And what are our options here for this configuration that we've just set up? So you can see that first of all, let me change my date back here. So you can see that first up, we have our requisition type available here, crisis tracking. We also have spend category here available. So we can look for our crisis tracking spend category here. And then under work tags, we would be able to pull in that project. So we have project by project group here. And then under the supplier parameter or option prompt here, we could pull in our supplier groups or categories. So if we set those up, we can use that here too. So let's go ahead and see what we find here. So we have 4 requisitions out here in our tenant, and we can see that they're all using our requisition type of crisis tracking. So similarly, on purchase orders, we can do some of these same prompts. We have a crisis tracking purchase order type available. And then we also have a requisition type. Uh-oh, I think I've, darn it. All right, let's come in here again. All right. Back where we were here. Okay, so under supplier, we have the options looking by supplier group and category, just like we saw on the requisition. We have available our purchase order type. We also have our requisition type. So if we wanted to use requisition types but not purchase order types, that's an option. We could see our crisis tracking requisition type here. And then also down here under our work text prompt, we could include project if we wanted. So we have one purchase order out here using our purchase order type of crisis tracking. Supplier invoices, similarly, we do have our supplier groups and categories available here. You'll notice on the Find Supplier Invoices report that we do not have an option to look for our spend category. However, there is another report. If we want to look just by spend category, we can use this Find Supplier Invoices by Spend Category report. And here, we could search by hierarchy or individual spend category and pull in just our crisis tracking categories. So let's see what we can find here. So much for having everything queued up at once. Oh, got nothing here. All right, so that was not a good example, but this report would help you find by spend category. All right, trial balance. So let's see, I have run this. Let's see if it's gonna, if we'll lose our page here too. I might need to reload it. All right, we are looking good for the trial balance. End of the day, trial balance is keen, right? So let's see what we can find here. So we've got our 2 general ledger accounts that we set up specifically for our crisis tracking. And on the trial balance, we can see that we do have some transactions here under our asset account. We've got this supplier invoice, one supplier invoice for our $2,400. And then under our expense account, We have some other transactions here. So we've got a couple of supplier invoices. Same thing for finding journals. I know we're running a couple of minutes over, so I'm not going to go into detail on all of these reports. But I do want to point out that we can also find assets by our spend category. So if we purchase some specific assets and we want to track or capitalize those, we can find those assets here. Okay, doggone it. I am really having trouble with that internet. Losing that internet really did not help us out here, guys. Sorry about that. So we have two assets that we've purchased using our crisis tracking spend category, so we can track our assets that way. And then very similarly, expense report lines by project. If we want to track these by our crisis project, our basic project that we set up, we can see we have some dollars here for that. I'm not going to dig into that because I think we'll get our red error again, but you can see that these are here. All right, let's hop back over here. We are almost done. I know we're running a couple of minutes over. So questions?
Awesome. All right. So we do have two questions that came through here. And the first one being, do you have to set up a new spend category hierarchy, and can you set up multiple spend categories?
So that's a good question. Yes, you can set up as many GL accounts and spend categories as you need. Would make your reporting and maintaining your account posting rule set easier to set up additional hierarchies, but you do not have to. You could roll up your new spend categories through existing spend categories if you wanted to.
All right. And another question we have here, how could I configure business process routing using some of this configuration?
So basically using condition rules on your business process steps. So perhaps you need special approval for any purchases using this crisis, any of this crisis configuration. You could base it on spend hierarchies, spend category hierarchies, or spend categories, or even using some of those transaction types that we talked about.
Perfect. And that is all the questions that we've had submitted.
Perfect. If you'd like additional information, please contact me or Mike Chrisman.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, everybody that was attended. Like Kathy said, feel free to reach out to her. Also, Mike Chrisman, we will be making this presentation available so that you will also have their information there as well. Kathy, do you have any last minute thoughts or anything you want to say?
I don't think so. Thank you all for attending.
Perfect. Have a good one, everybody.